Imagine building one of America's biggest bookstore empires. Hundreds of stores, millions of customers, and a brand known across the country, only to disappear completely. Borders once dominated the American book industry. But while Amazon and digital technology were changing the way people bought and read books, Borders failed to adapt fast enough. How did a small bookstore become a retail giant? And what decisions led to its shocking collapse in
Borders was one of America's most famous bookstore chains, but its journey from a small independent bookstore to a national retail giant and eventually to bankruptcy is one of the most important stories of technological disruption in American business history. The company was founded in 1971 in Ann Arbor, Michigan, by brothers Tom Borders and Louis Borders. The original Borders book shop was a small store, but the brothers had a vision that would eventually transform the business. Louis Borders had a strong mathematical and analytical background and developed an innovative computerized inventory management system that helped the company understand what books customers wanted and how many copies each store should carry. At a time when sophisticated computer-based inventory systems were uncommon in retail, this technology gave Borders an important competitive advantage. The company could analyze sales patterns, manage inventory efficiently, and provide customers with a wide selection of books while reducing the risk of carrying too much unwanted stock. The location in Ann Arbor was also ideal because the University of Michigan created a large community of students, professors, academics, and readers. Borders gradually developed a reputation for offering a wide selection of books and providing customers with a comfortable environment in which to browse. During the 1970s and 1980s, Borders expanded beyond its original location. The company developed its business model around large selections, sophisticated inventory management, knowledgeable employees, and customer service. In 1988, Robert DiRomualdo joined the company and helped accelerate its expansion. Borders increasingly adopted the large bookstore or superstore concept. These stores were much larger than traditional independent bookstores and offered customers thousands of titles under one roof. Customers could spend hours browsing books, magazines, music, and other products. This new format became extremely popular in the United States during the late 1980s and 1990s. Borders also began expanding into music and movies, turning some stores into broader entertainment destinations. This strategy initially worked very well because consumers were buying physical books, CDs, DVDs, and magazines in large quantities. The company was not simply selling books, it was creating an experience in which customers could browse, discover new products, meet friends, attend author events, listen to music, and spend considerable time inside the store. This helped Borders establish a powerful national brand. A major turning point came in 1992 when Kmart acquired Borders and combined it with its Walden Books business to create the Borders Walden Group. The acquisition gave Borders access to additional resources and a much larger retail network. However, integrating the two organizations created operational complexities, including challenges involving technology and inventory systems. In 1995, Borders was separated from Kmart and became an independent public company known as Borders Group Inc. The company continued to grow and became one of the leading bookstore chains in America. During the 1990s, Borders competed directly with Barnes & Noble, another rapidly expanding bookstore company. The two companies helped create the bookstore superstore revolution in the United States. Their large stores, huge selections, cafes, comfortable environments, and promotional events attracted millions of customers. Borders reached its peak during this period and became a familiar part of American retail culture. The company also expanded internationally, establishing operations in countries such as Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, and other markets. At its height, Borders operated hundreds of stores and had become a major force in the global bookselling industry. However, while Borders was expanding its physical stores, an entirely new retail revolution was developing. The internet was beginning to change the way Americans purchased products. Amazon, founded in 1994, initially focused heavily on selling books online. Amazon's business model offered customers something physical bookstores could not easily match: an enormous selection accessible from home at any time. Customers could search for specific titles, compare prices, read reviews, order books online, and have them delivered without visiting a store. Amazon did not need a bookstore in every city and did not have to devote physical shelf space to every title it offered. This gave it a major structural advantage over traditional bookstore chains. Borders recognized that the internet was becoming important, but its response became one of the most controversial decisions in its history. In 2001, Borders entered into an agreement with Amazon to operate and power the Borders.com online business. Amazon handled important parts of the online operation, including technology, inventory, fulfillment, and customer service. At the time, this seemed like an efficient solution because Borders could avoid the enormous expense of developing its own e-commerce infrastructure. However, the decision had long-term consequences because Borders did not develop the same level of internal digital expertise and customer relationships as Amazon. Instead of building a powerful online competitor, Borders effectively allowed one of its future competitors to operate a major part of its digital business. The internet was not the only technological threat. The music and movie industries were also changing rapidly. Borders had expanded into CDs and DVDs, which had been profitable during the 1990s, but digital downloads, online music services, and eventually streaming began reducing demand for physical media. The company therefore lost an important source of revenue while its physical stores remained expensive to operate. The rise of e-books created an even more serious challenge. An e-book did not require printing, paper, shipping, warehouse space, or physical shelf space. A customer could purchase a digital book instantly and begin reading it on an electronic device. Amazon's Kindle helped accelerate the popularity of digital reading, and the traditional bookstore model became increasingly vulnerable. Borders eventually recognized the importance of digital books and in 2011 announced an agreement to market and sell e-books through Kobo and promote Kobo e-readers. However, this strategy came very late. By that time, Borders was already suffering from serious financial problems and did not have the resources required to compete effectively with Amazon and other established digital platforms. Another major problem was Borders' enormous physical store network. The large superstores that had once been the company's greatest strength gradually became a financial burden. Maintaining hundreds of stores required substantial spending on rent, employees, utilities, maintenance, inventory, transportation, and other operating costs. Online competitors did not face the same physical store expenses. As customers increasingly moved online, Borders' fixed costs became increasingly difficult to support. The company operated hundreds of Borders superstores, Walden Books locations, and other smaller stores. Not every location was profitable, and the company eventually had to close many underperforming stores. Instead of continuing its previous expansion strategy, Borders began shrinking its physical footprint. The company was attempting to reduce costs at the same time that it needed significant investment in technology and digital transformation. This created a difficult financial problem because the business needed money to modernize while its traditional sources of revenue were declining. Financial pressure became particularly serious during the 2000s. Borders faced strong competition, changing consumer behavior, declining physical media sales, and the growing popularity of online shopping. The company also carried significant financial obligations, which reduced its ability to invest aggressively in new technology and digital business models. When the global financial crisis hit in 2008, consumer spending declined and many retailers suffered. For Borders, the economic downturn arrived at a particularly dangerous moment. The company was already facing structural changes in the bookselling industry, and the financial crisis made it even harder to recover. Borders' own financial filings later identified reduced customer spending, increasing industry competition, and insufficient liquidity as important factors behind its bankruptcy. The company was no longer simply dealing with a temporary decline in sales, it was confronting a fundamental transformation in its industry. Borders also faced intense competition from Barnes & Noble. Barnes & Noble had established its online operation, bn.com, in 1997 and later invested in digital books and its Nook e-reader platform. This allowed Barnes & Noble to maintain a major physical bookstore presence while also developing a digital strategy. Borders, meanwhile, was caught between two powerful competitors. Amazon was leading the online and digital transformation, while Barnes & Noble remained a major physical retailer and also developed digital capabilities. Borders therefore struggled to establish a strong position in either the traditional or emerging market. Its stores were expensive compared with Amazon's online model, while its digital strategy was weaker and later than those of its major competitors. The company's organizational structure and strategic decisions also contributed to its problems. Borders had become extremely successful with physical bookstores, and that success may have created resistance to changing the business model. The company knew how to build large bookstores, manage physical inventory, and attract customers to its stores. But the future of bookselling was increasingly moving toward e-commerce, digital content, mobile devices, data-driven recommendations, and home delivery. Established companies often face a difficult problem when new technology threatens their existing business. Investing heavily in the new model can reduce the importance of the old model. Borders needed to encourage customers to buy books online and eventually purchase e-books, even though doing so could reduce sales through its physical stores. Amazon did not face this conflict because its business was built around the new digital model. Borders had to protect its existing business while simultaneously trying to create a new one, and it was unable to make that transition quickly enough. The company's financial situation eventually became critical. By 2011, Borders had hundreds of stores but insufficient liquidity to continue operating normally. On February 16, 2011, Borders Group and certain subsidiaries filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The company initially hoped that bankruptcy would give it an opportunity to restructure, reduce costs, close unprofitable stores, and find a buyer or investor capable of providing the resources needed to continue the business. Borders announced plans to close 226 underperforming superstores as part of its restructuring efforts. Now the company was closing locations in an attempt to survive. However, reducing stores also reduced revenue, while the company still needed investment in technology and digital operations. Borders therefore faced a difficult cycle in which cost reductions could weaken sales while investment requirements remained high. During the bankruptcy process, Borders searched for potential buyers and investors. The company needed someone willing to provide capital and take responsibility for restructuring a business facing intense competition and a rapidly changing industry. Potential buyers had to consider whether Borders could realistically compete with Amazon and Barnes & Noble, whether its large store network could become profitable, whether its debt and leases could be reduced, and whether a digital transformation could be completed in time. Ultimately, no buyer emerged willing to preserve the company as a major going concern. In July 2011, Borders moved toward liquidation. The company entered into an agreement with liquidation specialists to sell inventory and other assets from its stores, and the bankruptcy court approved the arrangement. The liquidation marked the final stage of the company's decline. Stores that had once been filled with customers and thousands of books were now filled with closing sale signs. Merchandise was discounted and sold, shelves were emptied, and employees lost their jobs. The Borders brand that had once represented the future of bookstore retail was disappearing from American cities. By September 2011, the remaining company-owned Borders retail stores had closed, and the corporate headquarters in Ann Arbor closed later that year. After approximately 40 years in business, the American Borders retail operation was gone. The speed of the final collapse was remarkable when compared with the company's earlier success. Borders had begun as a small bookstore in Ann Arbor in 1971 and had grown into a national retail giant with hundreds of stores. Its success had been based on technology, inventory management, customer experience, large-format retail, and an understanding of what readers wanted. Yet the same technology-driven environment that helped Borders grow eventually transformed the industry in a way that the company could not successfully navigate. The reasons for Borders' downfall were therefore numerous. One of the most important was its failure to build a strong independent online business early enough. Its decision in 2001 to allow Amazon to power Borders.com meant that the company did not develop the same digital capabilities as its competitor. Another major factor was the delayed response to e-books and digital reading. Borders eventually partnered with Kobo, but this happened when the company was already in bankruptcy and had limited resources. The company's financial situation eventually became critical. By 2011, Borders had hundreds of stores but insufficient liquidity to continue operating normally. On February 16, 2011, Borders Group and certain subsidiaries filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The company initially hoped that bankruptcy would give it an opportunity to restructure, reduce costs, close unprofitable stores, and find a buyer or investor capable of providing the resources needed to continue the business. Borders announced plans to close 226 underperforming superstores as part of its restructuring efforts. This was a dramatic change from the company's earlier years when opening stores had been one of the main engines of growth. It would therefore be inaccurate to say that Amazon alone caused the collapse of Borders. Amazon was a major factor, but Borders also made internal strategic decisions that made it more vulnerable. The company had opportunities to invest in e-commerce earlier, develop its own digital platform, reduce its physical store footprint, invest in e-books, and use its large customer base to create a stronger online ecosystem. None of these strategies would have guaranteed survival, but they could have given Borders more flexibility. The company had a valuable brand, strong relationships with publishers, millions of customers, extensive retail experience, and sophisticated inventory technology. Its problem was not a complete lack of resources or intelligence. Its problem was the speed and direction of its transformation. The Borders story contains a powerful irony. The company became successful partly because it embraced technology. Lewis Borders' computerized inventory system helped the company understand customer demand and manage its books more efficiently. Technology gave Borders an advantage over traditional bookstores. Decades later, technology once again transformed the industry, but this time Borders struggled to keep up. Amazon used technology to change how books were discovered, purchased, delivered, and eventually read. Borders had mastered the physical bookstore but struggled to master digital commerce. This illustrates an important business lesson: innovation is not something a company can accomplish once and then stop. A company that succeeds because of one innovation must continue innovating as markets change. Another important lesson is that operational excellence is not the same as strategic adaptability. Borders was highly skilled at running physical bookstores. It knew how to select inventory, organize stores, create attractive shopping environments, and encourage customers to browse. Its stores were often excellent retail experiences. But the more important strategic question was whether customers would continue wanting to visit physical stores to buy books.